Good morning, Mets fans, and welcome to a Wednesday edition of Driving with Mr. Met. I am Mr. Met, and I have three things I want to talk about today on the show. This is not going to be my Spring Training All-Stars edition. That's going to be tomorrow or Friday, whichever day works better for me as far as my schedule goes. No, today I have three other things I want to talk about. One of them is sort of not baseball, not directly on-field baseball related, and the other two are. So I want to get into those couple of topics and chat about them on today's show. I ignored a story, and I didn't ignore it, but I sort of neglected to talk about a story that broke over the weekend, and it came on the heels of another announcement that the Mets made, and I'm talking about the appointment of some and the signing and appointment of some special advisors to the front office for the Mets. And the three names that I want to talk about today are two former baseball players and one former softball player who I have been especially critical of. And that former softball player is Jessica Mendoza. So I've never been a huge Jessica Mendoza fan as far as her broadcasting is concerned, and I've made no bones about hiding that. I've just never been a huge fan of hers. That being said, as I understand it, as I've learned a little bit over the last couple of days, she's actually pretty advanced as far as the analytical side of baseball is concerned. So I don't actually hate this hire. My first reaction was actually positive, because I thought, well, if she's in the front office, there's no way she can still be calling Sunday Night Baseball. And then I found out that she would still be calling Sunday Night Baseball. So, interestingly, I listened to Mike Silva's podcast over from Sunday, and he had Mike Vaccaro on. And they talked about, at least I think it was their podcast. It might have been another one, but regardless, they talked about the potential conflict of interest as it pertains to a broadcaster who may or may not be doing interviews with players or coaches or managers or whatever, who also at the same time has a vested interest in a team that is playing against those players and or managers and or coaches, etc. So that's an interesting point that they brought up, and I hadn't thought about it that way. But you know, it's certainly not the first time this has happened. It's the first time it's happened for a female broadcaster who is now also at the same time a member of a front office. But you know, whatever, live and let live. I say I'm kind of fine with her being in the front office. I'm also very much on board with bringing in Al Leiter and John Franco. Those are the other two advisors that were announced. So I don't know that those two will have significant roles, or at least as significant a role as Mendoza will have, but it's always nice for me when the Mets bring back players that were important throughout their franchise to be involved in the current team in any capacity. So whether that be Piazza coming in as a special instructor every year in spring training or whatever, it doesn't matter. I just like that they do stuff like that. So that was, I wanted to get that out there about the advisors and throw my opinion on it. The next thing I want to talk about is a comment that Mickey Callaway made about Michael Conforto. And the comment was basically, and I'm going to paraphrase, Conforto is going to be the everyday right fielder. And I was surprised about that, only because it seems like we see more of Conforto in left field, and Nimmo is more in right field. But I guess the brain trust behind this decision, and I don't, by the way, think this was a Mickey Callaway decision, but the brain trust sort of must sort of feel that Conforto provides better defensive metrics in right field than Nimmo does. I don't think this is a criticism of Brandon Nimmo in right field. I just think it's an evaluation of Michael Conforto's arm being stronger than Nimmo's arm, and that's why they want Conforto in right field. I watch every game, and I don't remember seeing Conforto playing right field an awful lot. He played a lot of center field when Cespedes was in left, but when Cespedes has been hurt, it's been Conforto in left field almost consistently. So this is a new little monkey wrench, and it also means that if the Jeff McNeil project in the outfield continues, Nimmo's going to be in center field. And I don't know how to feel about that. I don't know that Nimmo's a really great defensive center fielder, but we'll see how that unfolds. Of course, a lot of the McNeil conversation is going to circle around what's going on with Todd Frazier and Jed Lowry. You can read about up on the news on both of those guys. Frazier has begun resuming baseball activities, and Lowry is beginning, I think, either yesterday or today. So they're both on their way back from their injuries, which means that Lowry's time in the infield is going to be short-lived, and so he'll be back in the outfield, introducing this this conversation that we're getting on here about who's going to play what position in the outfield. Personally, I don't want it to sound like I don't care about defense, because I very much do, but I think that Nimmo and Conforto are so similar in terms of their defensive skills. I'm not that concerned with where they play in the outfield. I don't think either guy is going to win a Gold Glove in any outfield position. All right. My biggest concern is, will they be comfortable in the outfield, and will it not impact their ability to hit the ball and have good at-bats? That's the main concern that I would have. So that's the only thing I would keep an eye out on if I were the Mets. Last but not least, some news about the Mets bullpen. Drew Smith, who factored in, seemed to be like he was going to be a potential bullpen arm on opening day. That will not be happening in 2019. Drew Smith, down with elbow issues, he will have Tommy John surgery, and he will miss the season. So that clears the path for potentially a guy potentially like Hector Santiago to fill in that last bullpen position. And I think Luis Avilan has done more than enough in spring training to earn his way on the team. So what's interesting here is, if this vacancy lets Santiago into the bullpen, that's 3 lefties that the Mets will be carrying. You know, that's a significant improvement over what it's been over the last 2 years, when it's been Jerry Blevins, who, by the way, almost completely lost his effectiveness against left-handers, and he was the only left-handed weapon until the Mets called up Daniel Zamora last year. So it's nice to see that they're paying attention to the fact that we need to have more than one left-hander out of the bullpen. So I just wanted to touch on that as well. I do think Santiago will end up being the guy that makes the team. We'll see how that goes out of spring training, because the Mets are very likely to carry one less bullpen arm because of all of the off days in the start of the season. It looks like Vargas won't get a start until like game 12 or 13 or something like that, when they need him. So we'll pay attention to that as well. Speaking of Vargy, 2 quick points. First, Vargas has been really good this spring, people. I know everyone's sour on Vargas, but I said, don't take the fact that he had a great second half for granted, and he did have a great second half, and he's picked up where he left off. He's been really good this spring, and I'm glad to see it, because it puts to bed a debate as to whether or not the Mets should have been writing him off for this season. At this point, it doesn't look like that would have been the smart decision. It looks like sticking with him in the 5th spot is the better choice. Last but not least, sad news about Tom Seaver. I just want to mention that I've never really seen Seaver pitch live. You know, we've all seen the YouTube videos, and we've all seen the various clips from the 73 season and the 69 season, and we've seen his 19 strikeout game talked about. But as a younger fan, I mean, I'm going to be 40 this year, so I didn't get to see Seaver in his glory. But I know enough about our franchise that I know how important he was. And my dad being the Mets fan that he was, I know how important Seaver was to those teams in the 60s. The guy that really earned that franchise moniker as the guy that really turned the franchise around. I mean, he was the catalyst for getting the Mets to the promised land in 1969. So sad news that Seaver will not be in public life any longer. And that it looks as though he's not going to be at the 1969 50th anniversary celebration in June, which sucks. But the caveat to that is that the Mets are planning to honor him in some way, whether it be with a statue, hopefully, or some other individual recognition that he most certainly deserves as a cornerstone of this Mets franchise. So that'll wrap it up for today, doing so on a somber note. The Mets do play this afternoon. I think they're on TV too, which, thank God. I hated yesterday that I couldn't watch the game. I had Game Day running, or Gamecast, or whatever the hell it's called on MLB. But I didn't want to listen and subject myself to the Marlins radio announcers, so I just watched the little updates on the screen. But anyhow, today they're on TV, and that's a good thing. So I'll be watching at 1:10. and hopefully you will too. So until tomorrow or Friday when I come back with the Spring Training All-Stars, thanks for listening / watching. I appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter at Mr_Met, and as always, let's go Mets.